Welcome to Good Morning Tobago on Tobago Updates, your source for current affairs in Tobago, Trinidad, and the region. With the perfect conversations to complement your morning routine, I am Candace Jackson. And viewers, well, we're going to get straight into things today because, well, today at the House at 1:30, there's going to be a special motion being brought forward by the minority leader, Kelvin Maurice, and that is a no confidence motion in the Secretary of Infrastructure, Quarries and Urban Development, which is Mr. Trevor James. So just to give us a perspective on that, we have none other than Mr. Max James on, right? To just give us a perspective on what's on our motion this morning, this afternoon. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, good morning.
Of the times, yes.
You carry me forward. All right. So good to be with Tobago Updates again once more. Well, so the motion is asking for the removal of the Secretary of Infrastructure.
And just before you get in, let me just give it a read so that you, the viewers, can have an idea of what's happening. So the motion reads as follows: whereas the public concern about allegations of bid rigging and corruption within the Division of Infrastructure, Quarries and Urban Development, and whereas the Secretary of Infrastructure, Quarries and Urban Development knew or ought to have known about these allegations of corruption, and whereas the Secretary's conduct in relation to allegations raises concerns about his suitability to conduct the affairs of the people of Tobago and hold public office, be it resolved that this House affirm a position of no confidence in the ability of the Secretary of Infrastructure, Quarries and Urban Development to continue to lead that division consistent with its oath of office, and be it further resolved that the House support the call of the Chief Secretary to act in accordance with Section 36(3)(c) of the Tobago House of Assembly Act to advise the President of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago to revoke the appointment of the Secretary of Infrastructure, Quarries and Urban Development. So that is basically the motion that's going to be before the House this morning. So, Mr. James.
So the motion is really laughable. It's not going to succeed. We all know that. And these things are really designed to give a bad image of, in this case, I say the defendant, who happens to be the Secretary for Infrastructure. But it's what I would say is a seminal moment where we have an opportunity to share with the people how governance works in the assemblies. I want to use that opportunity to explain to the Tobago public how the assembly functions, how the executive council functions, how the whole question of tendering, which is the core of the matter, I suspect, how it functions. So there are three types of tendering. Let's go straight into it. Because you talk about bid rigging and all of that, and collusion and chickenery and all of those things in the tendering process. So, firstly, we have sole select tendering. So I know you, I know your competencies, I know your capabilities, I know your capacity, all the things about you that I can select you to do a particular project for me. Then there is, broadly speaking, selective tendering. It's more a group kind of interface where I know a set of contractors and I also, again, know their competencies and so forth. And I also can depend on them to bring my project to fruition, from conception to fruition, where you're going to deliver the project to me on time. So I may say, let me select of this group of 15 persons or so, thereabout.
Yes.
It could be 5, but more than 1, right? Preferably to widen the scope, let's say about 15 contractors. And one will of course, emerge as the successful bidder. And then you have the open tendering, where you have everybody is thrown inside and shake it, so to speak.
Certainly.
And then one is selected. Now, there's an interesting word in public service language that's called exigence, or the exigencies of the service. We know that the executive council is there to provide goods and services for the people, or the cabinet, for the people of Trinidad and Tobago. You would recall last year when there was the inclement, severe rainfall.
Yes.
In that case, the executive council or our cabinet here in Tobago would have agreed for the secretary to do it in-house. But at the same time, you also had Carnival coming up. And there's so many things to be done. And I want the people in Tobago to understand, no government, nowhere in the whole wide world can do everything for itself. This is why services are contracted out. Mm-hmm. And if something is exigent, meaning it is critical, is an emergency, then we still have to remember that the executive doesn't have, or the government doesn't have all the tools to do the job.
And then, I mean, on
so we have to contract it out.
Certainly. And then on that point, that's where the concern arises as to whether or not the situation really does qualify for emergency works, as opposed to just, wanting to look good for Carnival.
Well, we always have to look good for Carnival.
Well,
because if you don't look for Carnival, you'll be criticized. So you do, you're damned, or you don't do, you're still damned. Mm-hmm. And it is at the end of the day, what counts is the public opinion. And from what I have seen, and I myself, I know you yourself, and lots of Tobagonians to date have driven on that road in the back of us here, and on the two bridges. I've never heard a negative comment from the persons who use the road. The business community loves it. The police like it because, I mean, it's less traffic for them to have to come and wave and call and go so and go so. There's less traffic on the side here, all right? And you're opening up the interior of Scarborough is another gateway in and out of Scarborough. And it does well for business and the schools and the people who live in the area and the general population of Tobago. I think it's only Mr. Maurice and his side are making noise.
No, Mr. Maurice also claimed that he has evidence and he has some documentation and so on to support his claims of bid rigging, as is written in the motion, and corruption as outlined. Now, of course, he used vague terms, but, and then we had Dr. Shane Mohammed on yesterday stating, the motion is too vague. That Mr. Maurice, if he does in fact has that evidence, he should be able to incorporate some of that into the wording of the motion itself.
Right. So if he was really, well, you said it, and other people seen it, he tends to be very vague. That's Mr. Maurice and his team. They're very, very, they misinform. And one way to misinform is to be very vague, to be very broad. And therefore, if the motion, if he had serious evidence, as he says, maybe today he'll produce it. But the motion needs to perhaps incorporate some specificity as to what he's talking about. And clearly, the motion is devoid of that particular piece of information or data, as the case may be. So, as I explained, no secretary or no minister anywhere in this whole wide world can do anything with public funds except it is approved by the cabinet, or in our Tobago case, our cabinet here, the executive council. If something is exigent or critical and a secretary wants to get approval, in this case, the secretaries in the executive council have a chat. Chief secretary, this has to happen, what we call a round robin. Can I have approval to do this? And the members will either disapprove or approve. I think what has happened here in Tobago, what's happening is that they intent on bringing down the government here in Tobago. So they throw anything at the fan, wherever it goes, wherever it can stick, it sticks. So that if they bring down Trevor James, because of his track record of doing things quickly and doing things for the benefit of Tobagonians, let us aim our guns at that young man and bring him down, and then the executive council falls. That's their plan. Very insidious, very, very, very dangerous plan that they have, and almost, let me say, introduce a new term, almost impious. Let me even not say impious, let me say impious And that new song will tell you how demonic their actions are
Certainly.
regarding the executive council.
And do you think that information would be brought forward today that will damage the character or the reputation of Mr. James?
Well, you remember a fellow called Jack Warner, right?
Certainly.
And he's had a track record of doing things quickly and doing things well. People are calling Trevor Tobago's Jack Warner. So we wanted the road fixed in Castara. He said, listen, let's cut the mountain and give the people have got a road to go home. That's action. Bloody Bay, let's get the tractors in and bulldozing and let us fix it. Bad Rock is next on his radar, and then the road to Bloody Bay is next on his radar. And so he has a track record of doing things quickly.
But those works are not really the source of the contention. The source of the contention are the four bypass roads, the 3 or 4 bypass roads that were utilizing contractors from Trinidad, that over contractors from Tobago.
Well, I explained to you and to the public a while ago, if people have the competencies, then you have to go where the competencies lie, not so? Would you select me, as I said my last time I told you, would you set me to do heart surgery? Certainly not. All right, so you have to select. Suddenly Indians are not part of this country? How can it be? Who were the workers on the ground here in Tobago? They were all Tobagonians. And the governments function by way, well, they do things that are either exigent and also very important. And they have to deliver. And this administration, as we can see, they are delivering. And, you know, when people are fruitful, that's where you're going to come. They'll come after the fruits. People who are doing well. I mean, the PNM had it. They are jealous of the progress Mr. James and Mr. Augustine and his team they're engaging in. What stopped them from opening up Scarborough? And Mr. Kelvin Maurice suddenly says, when he's charged with corruption, says, no, I don't want to hear about that PNM, I want to hear about this PNM. So he is implicitly accepting and acknowledging that, according to him, the past PNM is corrupt. He said, I don't want to hear about them, I ain't business with them. But he's not in governance. But we know in him, by his mind, that if he's admitting that they were corrupt, then he, by extension, that opposition has to be corrupt too.
Definitely. Now, we're getting ready to wrap this conversation, unfortunately. But I want to give you a chance to basically speak to the people of Tobago and to just sort of put this whole thing into perspective. What do you want them to think about as we're getting ready to listen to the proceedings in the House later this afternoon?
Well, the administration will have another opportunity of explaining to the people and showing and demonstrating to the people of Tobago the record so far in the tenure of Mr. Farley and his team. The people will hear once more all the good things and all the good things that would have been delivered and yet to be delivered on behalf of Tobagonians with limited funds. There is no wrong in selecting somebody from Trinidad. PNM did it all the time. They had Foster Cummins here, and I had lots of PNM people here. So they can't, I mean, what really are they getting at? There's nothing wrong with selecting an Indian. What is wrong with that? They are part and parcel of the PNM Indians who are the good Indians. Let us put it that way. But suddenly the PDP Indians are the bad Indians. By what template are you measuring that? So they're being very racist, and racist conveniently. Are there PNM? Are there Indians in the PNM party? Are there Indian ministers of government? What it is that they want? I think the PDP, or no longer PDP, Farley and his team, they're producing, and in record time. And I think the PNM are jealous of that. In the motion today, you will see Mr. Maurice leading his motion, and he'll try to make the case. And the case is bound to fail. It will fail. It's a nonsensical motion. It is just hysteria and you know, an opportunity to try and bring down. It's not good for the politics. For without cause, you want to sully the name of a secretary who is producing, very productive. And I think if Mr. Maurice wants to be an opposition leader that people can respect, he must first learn not to throw stones and to damage people's reputations in the public. I think that he's talking about an old PNM, and he's now the new PNM. Well, he must begin to do things that people can respect him and not do things to bring down persons who are producing for Tobago. The question Tobagonians will have to answer: what Mr. James did, do you like it? Do you like the roads? Do you like the plans? He's delivered in King Peter's Bay. He's delivered another place in Moriah, and so forth. And he's just producing and producing and producing. Yes. That is what conquers the people. The people are happy from what they have seen, and they're also happy for the things that are announced to come.
Right.
And so far, over the year, I'm only seeing success after success. And that is not just saying it, but it is evident on the roads of Tobago.
All right, I want to thank you so much, Mr. Max James, former Assemblyman, for giving us his perspective on what's to happen later this afternoon at 1:30. The House sits, where Mr. Minority Leader Kelvin Maurice would bring that no confidence motion against the Secretary of Infrastructure, Quarries and Urban Development, Trevor James. So please don't go anywhere, because we'll be right back after this break with more on GFT.